Welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show, where we believe that growth could come in many forms: professional, personal, company, sales, you name it. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, founder of Transcendent Sales Solutions and a guide to a world of growth possibilities. I've spent my career empowering companies and their people with strategies that accelerate growth. I'm here to bring you stories of these business leaders and their trusted advisors to gain insights into their journeys and learn how they fuel their own growth. Just maybe their journey could become part of your own growth story. Are you ready? Let's grow. Welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, and we're here with our next guest, which is Trenelle Lyiscott. Trenelle, welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Before we get started, I want to just tell the audience a little bit about you. Trenelle Lyiscott works in the emerging cyber technology sector, where she directs and oversees business development and channel partner program for Celotex Corporation. Celotex patented platform is an industry frontrunner in governance, risk, and compliance, fitted to suit the needs of small and enterprise-sized organizations. Some of Trenelle's immediate goals are to become a board member, publish a book on navigating corporate America and technology, and funding a non-profit youth leadership program for the underrepresented. Trenelle, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to start by talking a little bit about how it all began. Now, I know you're a California native and grew up in sunny California in this cold winter day here in Georgia.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about kind of where you started. I know you went to school at Cal State and started out in business. So talk a little bit about your journey.
So it's so funny. I originally wanted to be a pediatrician. And my first stint in Atlanta was in high school. I got to come on a road trip, basically, where we basically looked at all the different schools that offer great medical programs and such. And then I quickly realized I didn't like to see blood. So that was the aha moment, saying, okay, well, pediatrician may not be in my wheelhouse. So I decided to go to business school, mostly because I figured that would be a big enough kind of platform for me to kind of decide what I wanted to do. So I did that at Cal State Fullerton. The Cal State system is about 17 schools in the network, and I chose Cal State Fullerton far enough from home, but not too far from home. So that was the cool part about that. I did business administration, kept it pretty general there, kind of focused on marketing a bit at the school there, and then took a break after graduating and then went to grad school to get my MBA at Chapman University, which was a great experience just because it's a private school, a ton of networking. The program is very well fleshed out, so a lot of guest speakers. And that's where I think I learned like the start of how to network, right? Was in grad school, which is pretty crazy to say that, but that's where it started for me.
And from that, your first big job out of Chapman was Verizon, correct?
Yes. So it's pretty interesting. I don't think they have it anymore, but Verizon had a program that was in essence an apprenticeship program that I think it was around 24 of us got admitted into the program. But every 6 months, we would rotate positions throughout the corporate company. So really getting a feel of all aspects of Verizon, whether it's operations, whether it's retail, whether it's, ops. So that was a pretty cool program because I really got to understand a big corporate company and how it's really ran behind the scenes every 6 months. I was learning something pretty new in my book, and that was a fun experience at Verizon.
And from Verizon, that was when you started in the technology industry. From my research is you went to work for a company called Lunatic?
Literally Lunatic.
All right, you got to tell us. You got to tell us about that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. So it was basically the original company was a subsidiary of Mophie Charging Packs called XPow Power, and we sold charging packs for different industries for sure. And then Lunatic came into play, and Lunatic creates rugged devices for military defense. You can put your iPhone in it, try and throw a boulder on top of it, and they claim it won't break. I mean, that type of devices. So it was a lot of crazy folks. We had a great time there. I love it because it was such a trendy, I would say, trendy company to be with. But we had a lot of fun. But yes, Lunatic was a great time. Got to manage our bigger accounts there, like Best Buy, Bed Bath & Beyond, few others as well. Nordstrom, we had a lot of big clients that we were selling those accessories into, and that was a fun experience.
Like like the tough book stuff like, and I'm sure I could only imagine the fun you guys had as far as showing how your products don't break.
Oh yeah, I never forget. We had a fun time in a Germany show, and we literally shipped this tube, like this long, big. It was almost like a fountain that was insulated, and we had our iPhones in the case, floating in and through it, and people would just come and say, "Can I dunk my phone in it?" And I mean, for people to have that kind of just boldness to do it was great, but actually proved the point that our devices did not get wet, didn't get damaged. But to do something like that at a pop up stand was pretty fun.
Talk about after you left the lunatics, talk about how you got into the cybersecurity market.
Yeah, it's so interesting because a lot of folks ask me that because now it's trending, right? Everyone's talking about cyber; it's a hot topic. But 7 years ago, it was kind of a thing that folks didn't really talk a lot about. It was one of those things. I have insurance for my employees, but no one ever really talks about cybersecurity and protecting that part of your business. But it was pretty interesting. Lunatic and XPAL Power at the time got acquired. We had just came back from New York Fashion Week, had landed some big deals, and it got acquired. And as part of the acquisition, the team that we currently had wasn't going to move on to the acquiring company. So we all got severances, definitely left there without any kind of ill will or anything against the team. And then I took a few months off. My plan was to take a year off, honestly, and just not work and just kind of do some traveling, catch up on life, because I felt like with the travel and the work stuff, that had kind of gotten to the side in a lot of ways. And I started going back to my local church in Irvine, California. And the small group leader was actually the president of the company I'm at now. And she invited me to lunch. I went through a small group. We had a great time there. And I found out she had owned this company, started and was sole founder of it. And it was about 25 years old at that point, an IT consulting company working for the government, mostly on government contracting. And she shared she wanted to start a commercial division for a cyber practice and asked if I would, in essence, come and try it. She said, "Hey, try us for the next 45 days. I never had a company say that. So I came on and tried it for 45 days and really enjoyed the team I was meeting, the events I was going into, the networking, and just the fact that what she was creating was so unique to market that I thought this would be a great place to launch into something new. And that's really how it started.
And you started in inside sales through customer service, and now you're the head of business development.
Yes, so quite the journey, right? So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool. When I first came on, I actually started off as a marketing analyst where I helped to promote the company marketing, right? Making sure that it's some brand recognition locally, going to events and such. That quickly evolved into inside sales manager. So I had a couple people under me that I worked with to drive, in essence, our platform to sales and managed services and such. And then from there, it went to a cybersecurity support manager, which I support a lot of our internal and external teams around our platform and our service offerings and how to really bring that to market, launching into some new industry targets and such. And then, now director of business development. So I know all the ins and outs of everything we're doing with our partners and with our clients. So it's pretty cool to see the evolution there.
And some part along the way, you ended up moving from sunny California here to Atlanta. Talk about that.
Yes. So it's kind of a cool story. Of course, during the pandemic time, my role became, in essence, virtually fully remote. And with that created some options, right, of what to do and where to go. At the time, I had just gotten engaged, and my husband is from the South. So I think as part of his plan from the beginning was to get me here by some means. And in essence, we started having the conversation of, hey, you're fully remote now. His job requires him to travel quite a bit on the Southeast Coast. So it was not a lot of convincing, honestly, because I was looking for something new. But now that I'm here, it's definitely a different change in weather. I'm sure, and no beaches, so I missed that quite a bit. So now we've been in Georgia now. Now we're married. December 10th will be a year since we've been married. So looking forward to that anniversary. And we're living now in Atlanta, Georgia, which is crazy for me to say.
Congratulations on your anniversary. And it is a big change, and you know that the great thing about Atlanta, from me moving here 17 years ago, it is a city of mostly transplants. And, it's how everybody comes together here and is friendly is just phenomenal.
I definitely feel the Southern hospitality for sure.
So, you've come a long way in your career. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you've learned along the way.
Yeah, I would say a couple things come to mind to me as the importance of expanding my comfort zone has always been a thing that I've always said. But now that I've been able to be in new spaces, new places, building new networks, I really understand the power of that. So expanding my comfort zone has been a thing. Relationships are everything. I think I've seen that time and time again, from whether it's this company I'm at now and clients that I may have talked to 5, 6 years ago, and now they remember me, and we're at another event, and they're introducing me to other people. Is pretty cool. And then also just staying really humble. It has been a thing. I am a person of faith, so just making sure that I'm always tied and plugged into my source has definitely been something that I think has helped me with good discernment and just good willingness to, again, learn and stretch in new ways.
And with that, tell me a little bit about, some advice you might give someone who's looking to take a similar path. I mean, because again, you've come a long way, managing a business development team that's nationwide, and you guys do more than you do outside of the U.S. as well, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So some of those younger folks out there, any other advice you might give that might help them along their growth journey along the way?
Yeah, I think I've always been a person that focuses a lot on personal growth outside of my corporate job. Sometimes I think it can be easily felt, or you think you deserve or your company should be doing that for you. The truth about it is that that's just not the norm, right? So making sure I'm always spending time investing in my personal development. So I do read a lot of good books. I'm a John Maxwell fan for sure, but I read a lot of great personal development books, and I use it to implement things that I know I need to work on, right? So that self-awareness and self-truth, I think, is really important. So from the younger generation, I'm a millennial, so our generation is really striving to make sure whatever we do has impact, which I think is really important. And for me, impact, of course, is helping companies with their cybersecurity, but on the flip side of that, it's building great relationships with people, right? And being able to say, hey, I know your daughter's birthday is coming up. Happy birthday. I know you just had a major surgery. Do you need a care package? Just having that relationship piece of it, I think, has gotten me a lot further than, degrees and stuff has, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So, what book or what's your favorite book you're reading right now?
I actually am starting two. One is called The Garden Within by Dr. Anita Phillips. And I'm reading another one called 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. So it's kind of a different kind of outlook, because most books are telling you to do this, and they're telling you don't do this. So I can't remember the author's name, but that's the two I'm reading right now. So I'm pretty excited. They've been great so far, learning a lot.
And you are definitely an avid reader. In our conversations, that's like a good weekend thing for you, is to curl up on the couch and just read and just rest that way.
Exactly. I always say, I think this too. I've never had coffee in my life, but I am a tea drinker. So I am definitely a tea and a book kind of person. My mom said I was always kind of this old soul since I was young, but I love it. I like that quiet time.
So what I want to do is switch gears a little bit and just talk about cybersecurity. Because, one of the things you said is 7 years ago, people weren't talking about cybersecurity. I feel like people are still, now it's more aware, but I still think in a lot of cases, people, individuals as well as companies, have a false sense of security and kind of have their head in the sand when it really comes down to it.
Oh, no, I definitely agree with that. It's one of those things where I hear it so often, especially with small and medium companies. What do they want from me? Or why would they want to hack me? I don't have anything they want. And the crazy part is, I don't think we realize that these hackers, yeah, there are some targeted hacks where they're trying to get to MGM, as an example. But there are a lot more untargeted attacks where it's just they're throwing something out there in the universe, right? In the Internet of Things, and seeing who bites on it. And those small and medium enterprises are usually the ones that are getting attacked the most, because they're not prepared around cybersecurity awareness and also just preparedness for things to happen.
I think the scary thing too is, if you look at it, it's that our personal lives and employee lives, intersect in the cybersecurity. And a lot of times the personal side is the entry point for these hackers.
Oh yeah, we talk about remote workforce, right? Everyone's doing it. We're doing this podcast from our home right now, right? We're doing all these things from our home, and a lot of times our Wi-Fi networks are connected to our Netflix accounts, our Hulu accounts, our YouTube TV accounts, and also to your computer, your personal computer, and your work computer, right? So it's a lot of intersection happening, and that crossover is where a lot of the problems start. To be completely transparent.
And your company has a trademarked, very unique platform for businesses, from small businesses up to enterprise type, larger businesses. Talk a little bit about it and some of the benefits of it.
Yeah, I think again, going back to when I was brought on to the group, I was pretty impressed at what they were looking to create and what we have created now, right? It's really pretty cool to see that there is an evolution in cybersecurity. I think before we just had our McAfee on our computers and we thought we were all safe. If it was all that simple, we wouldn't have all these problems and all these highlight news events every single day, right? But our Cytelix platform is unique in the fact that it brings together awareness around risk, like the truth. Where are you, right? As an organization, whether you're remote, whether you're in office, whether you're a hybrid, how is the organization doing with current risk? Because that's really the first part. Where are you? And then from there, putting together a plan to fix the problems, right? Not just leave the problems there and active, but fixing the problems. But while the problems are being fixed, there needs to be ongoing awareness around the changes that may be happening. Because just because you're working on your cybersecurity doesn't mean that other cyber threats are not coming in. So it's really, I always say cybersecurity is never a point in time. It's all the time. It's literally all the time. You can have an assessment done right now this Friday morning at 10:50 in the morning and look really great. By 11:10, it can be a whole different story if something else has gotten into your environment. So our platform brings together all those pieces into one single pane of glass. And the reason why that is unique is because there are a lot of tools that are ran to help with reducing risks and managing vulnerabilities and such, but they're all segmented in silos into their own different platforms. Having one platform that ingests all those pieces, it really allows you to say, hey, let me log in and see where I am right now and what changes are happening in real time. And that's something that we really prided ourselves on, is the real time awareness versus, hey, this happened an hour ago or 30 minutes ago. You want to know where you're at right now. And we provide that as a fully managed service for small and medium businesses all across the US and, again, international clients as well.
I find that what gets, individuals and business owners' attention is the news. And when they hear like the latest hack, and it's like oh God, and it seems like it's still very reactionary, and those horror stories resonate. So, of course, keeping confidentiality, can you share some, a horror story that might get somebody's attention?
Let's take a moment for a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Growth Catalyst Show was brought to you by Transcendent Sales Solutions. Whether your company is facing uncertainty, declining sales, or resource limitations, Transcendent Sales has the solution. Their team has decades of experience helping businesses find alignment to meet their growth goals and transforming underperforming sales organizations into revenue-producing market leaders. They take a hands-on, results-oriented approach to solving sales challenges. Visit transcendentsales.com to learn more and subscribe to the bi-weekly Growth Catalyst newsletter for insightful growth strategies. Transcendent Sales Solutions, empowering businesses to reach new heights. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, I guess I could share a couple of them, anonymized, of course. But when everyone went remote during the pandemic time frame, a lot of companies still maintained their office equipment. So they had printers and fax machines and such still running. We had a prospective client call us saying, hey, none of our computers are working. We're not sure what's happening. And we're on the proactive side. So Cytelix is very proactive with these things, because I always share the reactive side of cyber is very expensive. Long story short, after doing some forensics that they had done with a bigger team, it was found out that their printer that hadn't been updated in months because they weren't in office had now been hacked and breached, and it was now extracting data from all the employees' computers, right? Because the computers were hooked to that printer in the office. So they, in essence, had a nice little funnel to be able to pull things off those computers and, in essence, shut it down. That's a scary one because, again, a lot of equipment, a lot of folks are using these external printers, and fax machines aren't as common anymore, but it still is a thing for some big organizations that they use it.
Mm-hmm.
They use it, right? So that's one. Another one I would say that was pretty interesting was a fish tank, a smart fish tank in an office. Beautiful fish in there. It actually controlled the water temperature and when food was dispersed in the fish tank. I remember old school putting my own pellets in the fish tank, but folks now have a whole system for their fish tanks. It's a smart device.
Everything's automated, even feeding your fish.
Exactly. Smart devices, right? But long story short, they had that fish tank on the same network as their accounting system. They had everything together. So their fish tank was hacked, and guess what they got? Their accounting information through that. So those are things where we don't think about like, hey, we have a great network, everything is connected, this is great. No, you actually want it to be segmented. You want to have the important stuff. And I always say your important stuff, you need to know where it is. You need to have it completely separate from your Wi-Fi's and your smart TVs in the office, your telephones and all that stuff, your smart screens. Don't have that on the same network. So those are just two that for me kind of just shows how simple it is to get into an organization these days and things we just don't think about.
One of my favorite myths I hear a lot is, well, I'm a Mac user and I don't really have to worry because it's a Mac.
Okay. Yeah, that's always fun because if that was the case, then why do we always have so many updates, right? That are always happening with these apps and applications. So I always share, and I just came off the Cybersecurity Awareness months-long tour. But whenever there's an update to an application, that means that it has been exploited already and they're trying to patch it. Just like our computers, we get the updates. Hey, you have 10 updates. You need to restart your computer. Exact same thing. That means something has been found and exploited. And now the provider is saying, we fixed it. We think update it, please, as soon as possible so it doesn't continue to spread. So Mac users, PC users, doesn't matter. They're both as vulnerable.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here with a couple questions. So speak to me as an individual and speak to our audience as individuals themselves. Give some tips on what they can do, some basics, if they're not already doing it to protect themselves.
Yeah, great question. I kind of drill it down into three different things that I always say kind of helps a client get started. For one, it's finding a great third party to do this, okay? A third party resource. So what we are considered is a managed security service provider, MSSP. I know we use acronyms, but I want to make sure that's clear on what we are. A security provider is going to have a different lens and perspective than one that is not. So making sure they focus on security, cybersecurity, risk management, that type of detail. And the reason why you want a third party doing this is because I know we usually have our internal IT teams, and it's one of those things where you can't grade your own paper. You're always going to think you're doing well because you have a certain lens. You're like, hey, I'm doing these very basic things. It's set. I'm not getting alerts on it. Everything is fine. Having third party eyes on it allows them to really have an unbiased opinion of what's happening, but also in the event that something does happen, the ability to quickly respond and recover. And that's where a lot of companies get into trouble. An incident has happened. We don't have the right things in place to recover from it. So now we're out of business for a few weeks, a few months. And then my clients are not going to hold on for me that long, right? They're going to want to know what's going on, and they're probably going to move providers. So that's one. The second one I would say is to decide on a framework. So all industries, for the most part, have a framework that they're following for cybersecurity, risk management, and protection. As examples, banking, FFIEC, European Union, GDPR, HIPAA, whenever we go to the doctor's office, manufacturing may have NIST and CMMC and DFARS requirements. There's so many, right? But there's an industry framework that is being talked about. Find out how you're doing against that framework. And then lastly is getting going on it, right? The first step is always an assessment that is measuring everything regarding that framework against that framework to really get the truth about where you are. And then putting things in place as simple as some simple technologies, right? Two-factor authentication, especially for us execs that are traveling a lot. Our devices are everywhere. So you want to make sure you have a second step to access your devices just to protect it in case it's left on an airplane, left in a hotel bathroom, making sure you have certain steps in place. Endpoint detection and response, being able to have a tool on your devices where in the event that something goes wonky on it, there's a kill switch. So it doesn't affect the rest of the network, right? That's important. Cybersecurity insurance, right? That's a hot topic right now. It's a lot harder to get it now than it was 7 years ago. That is because there's so many payouts have happened. Some brokers and companies aren't even offering as an option anymore because of how expensive it's gotten. But having these things in place ahead of time, like ongoing monitoring, EDR, as I mentioned, an assessment done, vulnerability and patch management will actually reduce your cyber insurance costs and give you a more likely chance to be able to be approved for it and have a lower cost to you, but a higher benefit in case something were to happen. So those are just kind of 3 steps I would suggest that a company does to just kind of get going to have something on the preparedness side of things.
And from an individual perspective, I know one is always, stop using your dog's name and your kid's name and your middle name as passwords. Any other, for those folks listening, just individual steps we can take that aren't really company related?
Yes. Don't use the same passwords on your personal stuff as your work things. Don't. Use a password manager, right? A password manager is going to create that 17 complicated password. The cool part about it is it's going to store it for you. So when you have to log into those things, quickly copy and paste it. Because like you said, net 2858, grandchild's name, that's way too easy to get hacked into. So keeping things separate, use a personal device and a business device. I always say that. I know we like to travel lightly, but having separate devices for things just really helps reduce that. And then public Wi-Fis, never use them. When I say never, I mean never. I know if you got to send that email out, use your phone as a hotspot or get the separate little hotspot puck that you can get from a lot of the cell carriers. But changing passwords often is essential. I would say, if possible, I would love you guys to do it all monthly. I know that's a headache, but at least once every other month, changing passwords out, especially to the most important places where you're storing the most important data, is change those passwords out pretty frequently. Will help.
So you brought another question up to my mind. If you are using public Wi-Fi, does a VPN actually protect you?
It helps to have some, of course, create some boundaries around, what is shared and what's not shared. But Wi-Fi's public Wi-Fi's in general, you just never know who's lurking on that network. Never know. And the person sitting next to you at that coffee shop could be doing something malicious and you just don't know. You guys are on the same Wi-Fi. And because our devices store so much of our client data, our company data, this is all intellectual property. You never want the stuff getting out. So you want to put a bit more, again, bounds around where you're using and accessing it.
So I asked you to share a horror story. Share with us a hero story, because I'm sure your company has many for as successful as you've been.
Yeah, I have one of my clients come to mind that's super cool. When they first started off with us, this was years ago, they had 2 locations for their company, a little under 100 employees. Since then, they have been on an acquisition journey. They have been acquiring companies left and right. Long story short, I think they're up to about 9 companies they've acquired now. And every time they acquire a company, before we bring them on their network, right, because we've been working on them for years, their network is nice and secure and being managed well. They have entrusted us to say, hey, I want you to do everything you did for us for this company before we bring it on, because we don't want to mess with what we've already invested in. And that's just a key thing. I know everyone is in this hyper process right now of selling and acquiring, which is great, but merging of networks, that's a whole other beast, right? So making sure that who you're acquiring, what you're acquiring is cleansed before you bring it onto your network is so important, because your entire company can go down with one bad attack or hack or breach from an external source, right? So that's been one of my hero stories, just seeing that company grow. I mean, I think they're a little under 600 employees now. They started, again, a little under 100 when we first started with them a few years ago.
My biggest takeaway from our conversation is proactive versus reactive. And that's what I've heard you say without saying it for, our time together today.
Yeah, you hit on the nail. And when I say proactive, meaning that there are kind of 3 things I like to talk about, and the proactive kind of bounds or kind of grouping there is you need visibility. You need to know what's happening, right? It has to be easy to use, more importantly. And I think everyone is understanding the importance of consolidation these days, right? So consolidating. Just because you have a bunch of things running does not mean it's working right and it's running right and it's spun up properly. So being proactive includes those 3 points right there, because I think it puts you as an executive and, of course, your company at ease, knowing, hey, we have these things under control, and we're actually being proactive on it. Because, again, as I mentioned earlier, the reactive side is very expensive, and a lot of times it forces companies to close their doors. And something I'll note, too, because I know you're in the same industry, too, professional services is the most hacked industry right now. And that's because these virtual CISOs, these virtual CTOs, virtual sales teams, they are accessing multiple clients' information, right? Multiple companies that they're being brought in to work with. So, of course, a hacker wants to be able to target multiple, right? It just makes sense. You just think about, just the access of data and such. So as we're all working with our different clients and partners and such, being more almost looking at it from a lens of just does this make sense to access right now? Do I have to send this email right now from this public place? Can I wait 30 minutes or can I just call them and get this figured out, right? Just finding other ways to be a bit more, again, stringent around what we're accessing is so important.
That is great advice. My last question to you is, if someone wants to learn more about Cytelix and contact you, how's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, great question. Very active on LinkedIn. So I would say that's probably the easiest sometimes. Or, going to our company website, pinging me through there. But LinkedIn is probably the quickest way to get a hold of me because I'm pretty active on that site.
Okay. And your company website is?
Cytelix, so CYTELLIX.com.
I just downloaded your 6 ways to strengthen your cybersecurity ebook this morning. I think it's a great tool. I learned a lot from it, and I encourage everyone who's listening to do the same. Trenelle Lyiscott, thank you for joining the show today. You gave valuable information and really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks, Dan. Loved it.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Growth Catalyst Show. Remember, you can take these stories of growth and make them part of your own journey. Learn from them, draw inspiration, and let them guide your path of growth. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, and I look forward to our next journey together. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, keep growing.